everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. Very excited this week to be demoing the Roswell audio cab mic. This mic has had a little bit of hullabaloo, a little bit of hoopla, a little bit of hype, as the YouTube creators like to say. It's hyped. All I know is a couple of my good friends have been using it and liking it. Here it is, the Roswell audio cab mic. Why do we like it? Well, you're going to hear. We did an incredible demo with Roan Martin. He's a young artist who we discovered on Instagram and had been doing Bowie and Queen and Beatles covers. Great voice, great aesthetic, just like the real deal. And it's awesome when you see somebody as young as that loving the music that we all grew up loving ourselves. So he is singing with a Roswell Polaris. I played guitar, acoustic and electric and bass. And on the acoustic and the electric, I use the Roswell mic, the cab mic, which is designed specifically to put on the center of the cab. So Matt McGlynn has very kindly offered to give one of these away. So enter to win. There will be a link down below. So yes, this is what's used on the acoustic guitar and the electric guitar. More to follow. Stay tuned. And on the bass, Matt sent us the Mini K47 KD, as in kick drum, and we thought we'd put it on the bass amp. So you're going to hear that as well. Not only did you get me on guitar, bass and acoustic, and Roan Martin on vocals, the drummer is the amazing Darby Todd. Now, you probably know Darby from playing with, well, many people, but Devin Townsend is a favourite for many people. He just did a little session that you saw a little bit online, maybe, where he was playing with Peter Gabriel at Real World. It's a great clip of Peter Gabriel grooving away while he's playing. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. Just a great session player, really super busy, and it's wonderful to be able to have him on this. So a world-class drummer, an amazing singer, and me. So without further ado, check out the video.
Ziggy played guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars. He played it left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band. Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could lick 'em by smiling, he could leave 'em to hang. He came on so loaded, man, well hung and snow white tan. So where were the spiders while the fly tried to break our bones? Just to be a light to guide us. So we bitched about his fans, and should we crush his sweet hands? Ziggy played for time, jiving us that we were voodoo. The kids were just crass, he was the Nas with God-given ass. He took it all too far, but boy could he play guitar. Making love with his ego, Ziggy sucked up into his mind, like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. played guitar.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. So let's get in and talk about all of the elements we recorded. Why don't we start off with the 12 string? Because the 12 string is, you know, one of Bowie's things. It's synonymous with him. I believe it was a Hagstrom 12 string he had all the way through the 60s, 70s, his whole life, and he wrote on it. Exclusively. That was like his guitar he wrote on. Makes perfect sense. You start writing the hits, why are you going to change it up? Really, really wonderful guitar. It's in the V&A, my wife pointed out, and I think we may have taken a photograph when we were there of it. So you can check it out at the V&A East. Highly recommend it. There's tons of Bowie stuff there. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so let's listen to the 12 string. Now I'm going to take off any EQ and compression so you can just hear how it was played. Played very aggressively with me bending the string, setting it too hard. EQ wise, I just put a bit of boost on the high mids. You know, it looks like I'm hovering around about 4 or 5K, and I did some cut of the low lows so it didn't get in the way of the kick or the bass guitar or even the low mids on the electric. And then a little bit of gentle compression. What am I doing? How much? Between 1 to 3 dB, depending. So I wanted this to be as authentic as possible, but a part of me thinks that if you want to go for it, you could do full-blown, you know, tape emulations everywhere. But this was a cab mic, so I used it as a condenser. I thought I'd use it on the acoustic. I used the beautiful LL16 Yamaha acoustic. In fact, everything was Yamaha. It's interesting, we just did a video where somebody said to me, Warren, it's good to see somebody on YouTube using the instruments that they say they use. That was a very great compliment. Well, it's not really surprising. I mean, the RevStar, that's the base model. It was $499 or $399 when I first got it. It is my favorite electric guitar, and I have a lot. Obviously, I've got some jazz guitars, got Strats, and tons of other guitars and storage all over the place. But that's my daily runner. It's on everything. You see it in all the videos. The LL16 I've had since new, I don't know, maybe 8-10 years now. Absolutely love it. And of course the Peter Hook BB. It's on everything. It's all over this song. All affordable, all amazing. Okay, the electric then, talking of the RevStar, the only real sort of EQ I did on it was I cut to K and then I did a lot of boost in the low mids and kind of the mid range just to get it thicker. Now I doubled it identically. But Mick didn't. The great Mick Ronson, he did it with his, first of all, with his Les Paul. I believe a Marshall, we used a Marshall as well. You'll see how we positioned it. The mic is about 6 inches off, as recommended by Matt McGlynn. I've got it sort of like on the center. It's a little bright, but then I had the amp set bright and the guitars bright. So there's a bit of ducking in those 2K area, and it's rolling off like 4.5K. Now, as far as the bass, like I said, we used the Mini K47 KD kick drum. To be honest, it's pretty tasty. If I take off the EQ and compression that I applied in the mix, the sound is pretty special. I mean, it sounds like the original, kind of honky. I love the part, the way it mirrors the electric. Just that's great. It's better. So this is Trevor Boulder's bass line. As near as darn it, I've probably made a few mistakes, but I absolutely love it. I love the way he follows Mick Ronson's incredible guitar playing, that dum bum dum bum ba dum bum bum. But the little noodly bits are great. You know, if you hear that against the acoustic and the drums, for instance, it's just fantastic. Let's throw in Todd Darby's drums. I had a lot of fun listening to the bass line and trying to figure it all out. I'm sure I made a couple of mistakes, but the intent there is great. He's playing high up and he's locking with the electric, makes it sound thick. It's great. So once I applied the EQ on the bass on the Mini K47, I just use it for mid-range and grit, and then the DI is the low end. Put the two together. Together. Now you notice with this track, there's no tempo. It plays as fast as slow as it wants. It's a bunch of great musicians in a room. Ken Scott produced, engineered, mixed this along with Bowie. The story goes that they spent a couple of weeks or like a month rehearsing, writing 2 albums.
They weren't making records for a particular group of people. They weren't listening to last week's hits and saying we've got to emulate those. They did what they wanted to do. The whole thing with David, one of his great talents, and he had many of them, but one of them was putting together teams that would work for him, that would give him what he wanted without him having to tell them everything that he wanted them to do. And that's what happened with the Spiders and myself. None of us needed to be told this is how it's going to be. It would be he'd show us the songs and we'd do what we were going to do.
Very, very well rehearsed when they came into the studio to do this. And you can hear it. If you go to the original tracks, which we did in a breakdown, which Eric's probably going to edit a little bit in now, you'll hear that, you know, it's not perfect. It's a little bit sloppy, but who the heck cares? It's great. One of the things I always find interesting is people always debate about modern music being too compressed. And I always tell them that all the guys I've worked with that recorded in the 60s and 70s in particular use far more compression than I would ever use. When I work with Jack Douglas and guys like that who made some of the greatest albums ever, they maybe put far more compression going in and onto tape than I normally would do. And if you listen, for instance, to that acoustic, like every chord is just grah. It's not grah, doesn't decay off quickly. It's taking that front part and probably doing 9 dB worth of gain reduction on the front of it. Same with the electric, which is, you know, going through a Marshall 100 watt. It's squashed. It's just grah. You just hear that chord sustaining because the whole front transient's just annihilated. And then listen to the bass, you'll hear the initial pick of the bass. And then after that initial attack comes through, tons of compression. It's great. Put the 3 things together and it's just beautiful. So Darby did take us through all of the mics that he used.
Hey, I am Darby Todd, and we are currently here in my recording studio where I have just finished tracking drums for a version of Ziggy Stardust with the marvellously well Warren Hewitt. And today we have been featuring some of my amazing Roswell microphones. So I thought it would be cool to quickly chat through what I've used. Now, before I get to the mics, British drum company Birch Drums, with coated Evans G2 heads, sound great. Went for the coated just so they kind of give a slightly more old school vibe. And those are running through a ID48 Audient interface that I have over there. Some of the drums are also going through an Audient ASP 800 and also a ASP 880 Audient mic pre as well. So that's the chain that I'm using. Onto the mics. Now, the first mic, and actually this is the first one I got from Roswell, which I absolutely love, are the Mini K87s. It's a large diaphragm condenser, but it's quite a small one. It's an absolutely clean, not trying to hype anything or bump anything. It's very transparent, and it just makes my drum sound incredible. Could be due to the orange finish, not too sure. Maybe that's the secret thing with this mic. But before this, I was using a mic that was twice the price, and these sound far superior. They just give me a great honest spread of the drum kit, and I find now that when I'm doing my mixes, rather than starting with the close mics and blending in the overheads, I start with the overheads and then blend in the close mics as needed. So this is a great microphone, Mini K87. Love that. Moving on from that, we have, what should we do next? We've been using the mic parts, which is the other company from Roswell, and this is the S25 tom mic. It sounds really good. It's very good at kind of rejecting bleed from other parts of the kit. It definitely minimizes the bleed. It's a fairly narrow cardioid pattern, and sounds really good. Moving on from that, we have the Roswell kick mic I've been using. This is just, I believe, known as the KD, and I assume that means kick drum. And I've been using this just in the hole of the bass drum. So you could say it's a kick out, but I think it sounds really good. It really handles low end well. I'm sure would work on bass cabinets really well as well. I believe it's got a slight boost around 4K, which really helps with the punch and slap of a kick drum. But again, you're here. I think this thing sounds fantastic. Then, snare mic wise, snare top, we are using another mic parts mic, and I believe this one is literally called the snare mic. If only it was always that easy. So this is kind of a high SPL version. I think it's a take on a KM84. But again, sounds really good. It's not quite as bright as an SM57, but I love what this does, and I use it on virtually all my recordings here. Then we have this, the RM8, which comes in this lovely, shocking pink color, because why not? I'm sure that is why it sounds so good. It's all in the color. And this is the RM8 is kind of, it's used mostly as a room mic. Now I'm using this as kind of what I call like near ambient mic. So I've got this maybe 2 foot in front of my drum kit. I've got one either side, so quite a wide spread to capture the overall vibe of the kit. From a drummer perspective, I just love this because it sounds good. It doesn't let too much top end in. It's definitely had top rolled off, and it sounds dark. Now, from a non-drummer perspective, and I'm going to read this off the notes that I made, just so you actually understand what it does other than it sounds good. So it's got a switchable polar pattern. You can go cardioid or figure of 8, which means that they can be used for different stereo configurations. So you could use it XY, AB, Blumline, mid-side. The top end is rolled off, and I think the great thing about the top end being rolled off is that a mic like this, you're typically going to smash the hell out of it and compress it, and doing that, you really don't want all that top end and cymbal crashing in there, because it just ruins your mix. So these things sound incredible. They've really improved the overall sound of my kit. When I just want to make things sound a bit bigger but have a really good vibe, I turn these ambient mics up. And then finally, we've got the big boy. This thing is the Colaris. It's a solid state, large diaphragm condenser, and I believe it's inspired by like a vintage Elam 251. It's got a tube circuit, so it doesn't have a tube circuit is what I meant, but it does create 2 sonic effects that they're the sort of sound that people want to get out of tube gear, but without all the rubbish noise that often causes problems. So this mic is incredible. I actually used this on a session recently for vocals, records vocals, fantastic. Today I've been using it as a kind of a distance room mic behind my drum kit, because I just happened to put it up in the room and thought it sounded really good there. Just got a nice vibe of the room, great sounding mic. So those are the Roswell mics I have been using today, and hopefully you enjoy them in the song that you're listening to.
Okay, so the kick in, let's hear it without any EQ. Pretty tasty. EQ I do is pretty typical for me. Bit of low boost, tiny bit of click being exaggerated, some 350 cut, and then the classic 80 to 100 kind of cut. I do this to get rid of any area where there can be build-up. When you have multiple mics that aren't completely phase aligned, meaning they're all sort of slightly off, no matter what you do on a kick drum or bass guitar or anything, you get some muddy build-up, and that always seems to be about 80 to 100, a bit too much there. And most importantly, that build-up ruins the bass guitar. Absolutely destroys it, because that's where you want the bass to live. You want that kind of like fullness in rock, at least, down there. So if we add the kick out just on its own again, very dynamic, and all I've got on here is a global EQ, no compression. Didn't compress anything. I mean, I compressed other things, but not. He's a very even drummer, and when he's not being even, like here, who cares? Sounds good. Boom, boom. Yeah, here. Go figure, a real performance. All right, snare top. Now, what I did do on the snare, which I think is really good, is I, both snare top and bottom, first of all, I time adjust the snare top to be in phase, or time aligned, to be certain with the overheads. So it's dragged back ever so slightly. So if you look at the time adjuster, it's 30 samples back. So it's here. So once that's done, I did do EQ, which is top and bottom boost. Same on both the mics. Bit more on the bottom snare just to get a bit more body because it's quite thin. Take that off. So just a little bit of body, two together. You haven't heard the ambience yet. The ambience, I'll show you where that comes from in a minute. But the main thing I did, and the big game changer for me, was using the Oxford Drumgate 2. I absolutely love this. I mean, it's so accurate. I've really got to have fun using it now. It's just great. Just makes mixing so easy. Now, I didn't use it as much as I have on other tracks. I'm going to do a big shootout of all the top 5 drum gates out there. Stay tuned for that. It's probably coming later this week. Not sponsored by anybody. I want to do all 5. This has been my favourite. I love the Sonable as well, but this is my favourite so far. And I just did a track with the Last Internationale, a brilliant track that was recorded with 5 mics on the kick. And they did a kick, a snare, mono overhead, mono trash mic, and mono room mic. So no cymbals really except for the kind of overhead, no toms. And so what I did is I used the Oxford Drumgate 2 and then time aligned it with that. Phase coherent, and it's pretty awesome. So love what it's doing here. But if I take it off, you can hear what the mics sound naturally with no gating. So it's pretty tasty what it's doing. Yeah. Floor. There's not a lot going on. Floor tom has only got that EQ on it. Sounds great. Got a bit of reverb. Got the same EQ doubled on that little subgroup that I created. Hats, no EQ whatsoever. Just sounds great. Ride cymbal, no EQ, nothing. I think he barely played the ride, but bounced 2 together. It's great. So here's where all the ambience you're hearing the snare is really coming from. Most of it is off here. So what I did is I took the mono room mic, wiped off excessive low end so didn't get in the way of the kick, and just put a reverb at 100% on it, 3¼ seconds. And then there's a stereo ambient room, same thing. Wiped off excessive low end. See what it's doing to the snare, it's awesome. And then there's a mic, which is called Stack Probably Not Useful, which is actually really good. But it's like a mono, like I had it cranked and I used it at different times, but I ended up liking a drum sound without it. Now I kind of like it. You see what happens? Take it, just use it as a mono drum sound, it's up to you. So there we have Darby's incredible drums, my electric, acoustic and bass. Now we have to just get to Roan Martin. Now Roan, as I was saying earlier, is a wonderful artist, love his sensibilities, and I really tried not to do too much. He's using the Colaris here.
As Ziggy played guitar.
So all I'm really doing is compressing.
As Ziggy played guitar. Jamming good with Weird and Gilly.
As you can hear, it's quite dynamic. So, you know, I'm not using tape emulation. You might want to try that on the mix. You might want to try and put some tape emulation in there and see if you can get it to be even more kind of organic sounding, as it were. But I'm not. I would highly suggest that you just don't do too much to it. The Colaris just sounds great. It's a really good mic. It really is wonderful.
Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and...
So he didn't use any compression going in, and that's the sound of the mic.
Ziggy really
Didn't
sang,
de-ess it, didn't do anything.
Screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan.
It's a great stereo going on here.
So where were the spiders? While the fly tried to break our bones, just a beer light to guide us. So we wished about his fans, and should we crush his sweet hands?
All right, so here is my guitar sound. Like I said, with the 2K dip. And some stock reverb, courtesy of the plate sound. Oh no, it's not the plate sound. It's a 1 second room, free with Pro Tools. Now, the part is absolutely brilliant. It's played by the incredible Mick Ronson, one of my favourite guitar players. Some of his lead work on Hunky Dory is unbelievable. Anyway, it was just really great. Plus, of course, that string arrangement he did. Ken told that story. I'd read that, Mick had gone to the bathroom while the orchestra were waiting and finished the chart for Life on Mars there and then. And Ken was like, yeah, that really happened. They made Hunky Dory in 2 weeks and they went straight into Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Just incredible. Like a month of two of the greatest records ever made. Testament to the band, they're rehearsing, Bowie's incredible songwriting, all the musicianship of everybody. Woody Woodmansey, of course, incredible drummer. Trevor Boulder, really inventive, incredible bass player. And of course, Mick Ronson, what a guitar player, along with Bowie. And of course, Ken he would nail this stuff. It goes to tape, EQ'd and compressed the way he wants it to be. It's just wonderful stuff. The breakdown we did with Emre when they did the full immersive mix, soloing stuff, they didn't do any EQ or compression or anything. It didn't need to. It was already recorded the way they wanted to hear it. So Jamie Humphries, a really good friend of ours over at Six String Alliance, did a breakdown of how to play this. And he's the one that told me you have to play it like a bar chord, like an A-shaped bar chord, rather than the open D one, which is what we all learned when we were kids. And also getting that arpeggio right is really difficult. But I hope I got it close enough. This bit. I love how that comes in with the bass and then...
guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly and the Spiders from Mars.
Okay, so let's kick things off by looking at the main riff. I'll play it first of all. Now, this section is double-tracked on the original recording. I've chosen to show what I think is the more prominent part with the chord arpeggios. We start off with the G major chord. Now, we jump up to a D major and we add the sus4 with our little finger. I must confess, I always thought it was played in the open position, but watching some videos of Mick Ronson, you can clearly see that he's holding an A shape of a D major. So he kind of rakes across the chord. You're raking across and then adding your little finger. Then we drop down to a C add 9 and you're pedaling off of the root note to the B string and then the G string. And you're just sort of dropping the root note down. So you're playing the C add 9, then a G over B. And then we have the open A, so it's like an A7 sus4. So you put that together. Play that slowly. And then we're back to the G major chord. Now over that section, the double track guitar is just simply playing, playing the chords that accompany, whilst on the other side you've got those chord arpeggios. Now that guitar part is one of those iconic riffs. It's really straightforward but incredibly memorable.
Hi, I'm Josh Hills, a mastering engineer from the UK, and today I'm going to walk you through how I mastered Warren Hewitt's mixdown of this cover of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust. Now, the first thing I'm going to be adding is some mix bus compression. And the name of the game here is to ultimately control the dynamics of the mixdown, smoothing out any small peaks and making everything feel more cohesive, balanced and consistent dynamically. We want to be quite subtle here. We don't want to do anything, any kind of like drastic moves. So in terms of ratio, 2:1 to 4:1, anywhere between this range works really well in mastering. You don't want to go any more than really like 4:1, unless there's some very niche circumstances. And in terms of gain reduction, we don't want to be going any more than say 1 to 2 dB of gain reduction. So I'm just going to take us into the loudest part of the track here, and we'll start dialing this in.
No white tan. So well were the spiders, while the fly tried to break our bones.
Now, it's worth noting, the slower the release we have, we don't get quite as much impact and as much perceived loudness out of the master. And then the faster I go with the release here, you kind of get more perceived loudness. And in the case of this master, you can actually hear kind of like the mids come forwards. So if you just take a quick listen to this, you'll hear it smoother when I'm at the 1.2 margin. And as I move to 0.1, you'll hear it get slightly louder and you'll hear those mids come forwards.
Just to be a light to guide us. So we wish to.
So ultimately, if you want to get your master as loud as possible, you want to really try and get your release as fast as possible. But be careful, you can't always go to the absolute fastest settings because this can cause unwanted things like pumping. Our attack, this is just going to dial in ultimately how the transient sounds. To be honest, 30 milliseconds, this is adding quite a lot of impact and punch, and the drums in this are already quite prominent in the mix. So I'm going to go a little bit slower here and see what works.
He came on so loaded, man, well hung and snow white tan. So well were the spiders, while the fly tried to break our bones. Just to be a light to guide.
Okay, so I'm really liking 10 milliseconds. This is making the transient of those drums denser, and it's kind of rounding off the punch a little bit. Now, one last thing, when we're doing our master bus compression, just make sure that we adjust our makeup gain. When we turn it on and off, we want to see roughly the same actual loudness on the meter, so we can actually hear what the compression, is doing here. Now, the next thing I'm going to be doing is applying some EQ, and I'll be using a kind of digital EQ for this, just so it's easier for you to see what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And what I'm kind of aiming to do here is balance out the track and kind of correct any issues within the mix down. Now, the first thing which is very, very obvious to me when I listen to this is it's quite dark. And to be honest, around this range here on the mix, on this 200, is kind of lacking clarity. So I'm going to start with quite a wide cut here. When we're EQing and mastering, our main goal is to use kind of big, broad, wide cuts, big, broad brush strokes. We don't want to be doing kind of lots of little narrow boosts and things and adding lots of kind of EQ shapes like this, because it's just going to be introducing kind of phase issues, and it's not going to, you're going to notice that you can kind of twist the mix and the spectrum of the mix out pretty quickly. So let's take a listen.
Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could lick 'em by smiling, he could leave 'em to hang. He came on so loaded, man.
Okay, so you can hear that's really cleaned up that area right here in the low mids. I'm also noticing that the vocal, I think the vocal can be a little bit more forwards. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a mid band. And the reason I'm adding the mid band is because while in the choruses, the vocal gets very, very wide. In the verse here, the vocal is center, and I want to kind of bring the vocal out a little bit more in the center. Despite the fact that in the chorus, we'll still hear it as I A-bit here, kind of bring the vocal out of the mix without kind of moving any of the elements which Warren's panned hard left and hard right, such as the guitars.
Then we were Ziggy's band. Ziggy really sang, screwed up eyes and screwed down hairdo, like some cat from Japan. He could lick 'em by smiling, he could leave 'em to hang. He came on so loaded, man. Well,
okay, so that's just lifted the vocal out a little bit. And the last thing I'm kind of noticing here is the hi-hat and the hi-hat's very, very brash. So I'm going to try and fix that probably later with some tape. But also around this area here, around 6K, it's still a little bit too harsh and too present. So I'm just going to bring this down a smidge.
hung and Snow White tan. So where were the spiders? While the fly tried to break our bones, just a beer light to guide us. So we bitched about his fans, and should we crush his sweet hands?
So that's just slightly bringing down the hi-hat mainly and some of the harshness in the track. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check if there's any low-end rumble here, which needs removing. So I'm just going to switch over to my big speakers here and take it off so I can hear it properly. And I'll be using a stereo band just so I can do it broadband across both the mid and the sides.
Jiving us that we were voodoo.
Okay, it's not super easy to hear. There's just a little bit of rumble there, but this isn't really doing much, but I'm going to leave it there just for the moment anyway. And I'm also just going to bring a little bit of weight here, up around 30 hertz.
We're just crap. He was the Nas with God-given Nas. He took it all too far, but boy, could he play guitar. Making love with his
And now that's sounding much cleaner. We've cleaned up the low mids there. We've also, kind of like balanced up, rebalanced the hi-hat a little bit. We brought the vocal out, which is working really well. And I've also added just a smidge of air here right at the very top, but it's more just to kind of, I was thinking it was sounding a little bit dull by cutting the 1 dB at 6K. So I just added it to add a little bit of kind of air and brightness right at the top end. Now, it's still sounding a little bit harsh to me, so I think the best way to deal with this would be Soothe. So I'm going to be adding OX Sound Soothe to this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try my best. Have I not got Soothe installed? Ah, yes, I do. Excellent. I'm going to try my best just to even out, yet again, some of the harshness. I'm also hearing some stuff here around this kind of like 1 to 2K. So I'm just going to subtly do this, then yet again up by the 6K range here, just to smooth it out so it's not sounding as harsh. So let's take a listen to this.
Ziggy sucked up into his mind like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. Ziggy sucked up into his mind like a leper messiah.
Okay, that's helping a little bit. However, I'm still not happy with the high end on that hi-hat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some tape machine here. I'm going to add a tape machine. And my main goal is to smooth off the hi-hats and the high end, and it's also going to help add that lovely tape aesthetic, which you hear a lot in records from this era. One thing I'm also going to be using this tape machine for is just to add a little bit of broadband widening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it on 15 IPS. I don't want anything inches per second. I don't want anything too drastic. If I go to 7.5, it's going to start sounding very, very dull. And I can showcase that for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the biasing up on the tape machine a tad, so it makes it more obvious. And then let's just take a listen.
When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band.
And look, you can hear it straight away. As soon as we go to 7.5, the high end roll off and kind of that low mid and low end bump is much more obvious. Take a listen.
Like a leper messiah. When the
Now, if you ask me, that's slightly too much. So I'm going to go back to 15 just to keep it a little bit more transparent. I only want to bring in the high end just a little bit more.
like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break.
And I like what the tape machine is doing to the high end. I like the way it's smoothing off, but I am actually just going to use this for a high frequency EQ just to add a little bit more back in. So it'll be a smoother high end. I really like what that's doing. It's also adding some subtle width there as well, which is really nice. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be getting it loud. So I'm going to be soft clipping into a limiter. Now, one thing you've got to consider when you're thinking about how loud you want to track is the louder you get something, the more smashed and the more compressed it's going to sound. And if you start adding hyper compression to things, while that can aesthetically work for a lot of genres like electronic music and EDM, where we hear it, with genres like rock, which goes, even if you think from 60s, 70s, 80s, things started getting louder as the decade started moving on. However, they weren't absolutely smashed to -4 during this period. So I'm going to keep that in mind, and I'm going to try my best to get it loud, but not absolutely destroy the dynamic range. So I'm going to be adding a soft clipper into a limiter. And the main idea here is that the soft clipper, this is going to truncate the waveform for loudness. Okay, so it's going to allow me to smooth out those dynamics before it hits the limiter. Okay, and then when I put the limiter on, that's where we can get some nice clean, safe limiting, just to edge out that last little bit of loudness out of the track. With soft clippers, it's worth noting, sorry, that on a lot of soft clippers, you can pick if you want hard clipping or if you want soft clipping. Now, the thing which is worth really noting about this is these have two very different sounds. Okay. Now, hard clipping creates fewer distortion events, but they're very noticeable and intense and can sound harsh and aggressive. This is great if you've got a genre which is heavily distorted, I don't know, some heavily distorted blues, rock or heavy metal, because then it's less audible. So you can hard clip to get things really, really loud. Whereas soft clipping, this produces a more continuous, gentle distortion that sounds more musical and smooth in comparison. So if you've got something where you want it to be less audible, in terms of like, you know, this harsh, aggressive distortion, it's better to kind of edge and lean on the side of soft clipping. And that's what I'm going to do here. And depending on the genre, you don't want to go too heavy here. Yet again, subtleties in the name of the game. We're going to go to maybe 1 to 2 dB of dynamic range. If it was EDM or a genre like drum and bass, which is really, really, really smashed, you could go up to like -3, but just make sure you use your ears, bypass it, and try not to add any unwanted artifacts or obvious distortion. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. Perfect. Right, so it's starting to get loud now. I'm just going to add a metering plugin on. So what I'm going to do is I will be using IK Multimedia's metering plugin, and I'm just going to now be checking for my dynamic range here and my LUFS to see where I'm at. For a track like this, I don't really want to push into like -6. I'm going to try and keep it around -8 to -7, but ultimately this is completely up to you and where you want. If you want it to sound really smashed, you can do that, but my main goal is to try and avoid this. Now, what I'm going to be paying attention to is, obviously I've got a LUFS meter on my L2 meter, but I like the way this one looks a little bit more. So I'm going to keep this one up. So let's check it out. Like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break up the band. Like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, okay, so as I'm limiting, I'm hearing those low mids come up a little bit more. So I'm just going to tame these and bring them out a little bit because, yeah, again, it's starting to get a bit muddy. Now, one thing which is worth noting with your limiter is just to check your attack and release times. Now, different limiters have different ways of working on their attack and release times. On the Pro L, ultimately what's happening is the attack time. This is setting when the release stage starts. Okay, so you've got 275 milliseconds until the release stage starts. So what does this mean? Why would you want fast or slow? Now, generally speaking, on a limiter like this, if you have a, say, shorter attack and longer release time, this is kind of cleaner, safer limiting. It can cause pumping and reduce clarity if pushed too hard, but generally you'll get kind of less artifacts if you move into this range. If you go to, say, like a longer attack, shorter release, okay, so if we're going to move to that, this, say, like, let's do extremes, let's do this type of thing here, you're going to hear lots of apparent loudness and presence come forwards, but you will start introducing distortion, so you've got to be careful with that. So I'm now going to dial in my my attack and release. Now, I think it's sounding loud enough, so ultimately I'm just going to try and adjust this in to ensure that it's just sounding very clean. Here we go. Oh yeah! Okay, I'm liking this. Let's check the chorus. Like a leper messiah. When the kids had killed the man, I had to break and that is sounding good to me. So I'm quite happy with this. I normally just spend a little bit more time tweaking the settings and A/Bing it versus references to make sure it's in the right area for the genre. But this is ultimately a very quick and fast run through of how you can master a track like this. Thank you.
So Matt McGlynn has very kindly offered to give one of these away. So enter to win. There will be a link down below. Everybody's waxing lyrically about this, and I'm really glad they are, because we love Matt McGlynn. Matt, he owns mic parts. He has been instrumental in helping so many people over the years, over the last couple of decades, understand about some of their more inexpensive microphones, how to upgrade them, make them better. So this natural progression, it's been quite a few years now, but into him making microphones makes perfect sense. And Colaris is an incredible vocal mic. I absolutely love it. Sounds great on Roan's voice. This is a great guitar amp mic. It's also great on acoustic guitar, as you can tell. And the Mini K47 KD, it's just great that he's getting out there and really making what I consider to be affordable. They're not $79 microphones, but they are affordable for the results that you're getting. Really wonderful stuff. And we're blessed. We get to work with a lot of incredible microphone companies, and we love each and every one for the special things that they make. And Matt's one of those guys. And I must add one more thing. Matt has been inside our academy many, many times, the Produce Like a Pro Academy, which I highly recommend you join, because it's going a massive update. So join now while it's quite cheap. So Matt comes in and he talks to everybody in there, and he tells them, quite frankly, what the pros and cons of, dynamics over ribbons, over condensers, over, whatever. And he talks about everybody's microphones, and he doesn't just talk up his own. He talks about everything. He talks in an even keel, very, very knowledgeable, a wonderful, wonderful guy who comes from an incredibly good place. So very happy to support him. And really happy with this mic. Really happy with the mics, and just totally blessed. So don't forget to enter down below to win. Download the multi-tracks, hear for yourself. Let me know what you think. And of course, mix it for yourself. I'd love to hear it. For all the Academy members out there, we will of course be doing this on Feedback Friday. We'd love to hear your mixes. Of course, we are produced like a pro, so that does mean you can feel free to add your own production, replay parts, replay the guitars, change the sound. As I was talking about Mick Ronson's guitar part on the right had a cocked wah. Try that, Try all kinds of stuff. You've got the DIs on the guitars. You can do whatever you like and have some fun with it. All right. Thanks ever so much for watching. Enter to win the Roswell audio cab mic. And thanks. So long. Farewell. La Wiedersehen. Au revoir. Adios. Goodbye. Thank you.